Hey everybody, welcome back to Video. So here I got another fun episode for you guys this week because you've been asking to see more GUN4IR. The first video was very popular and you wanted to see me talk about the setup guide on some different platforms, so I decided where better to start than the Sega Model 2 because it has one of the best arcade Lightgun games of all time. Obviously I'm talking about the House of the Dead, but the GUN4IR has been absolutely spectacular in everything I've thrown at it, and if you follow the setup guide it is quite simple. You'll be playing some amazing things on Model 2 emulator as well. If you don't have a GUN4IR yet, I can't recommend you pick one up enough because the Model 2 has some of my favorite arcade Lightgun games of all time, and they are all compatible with GUN4IR, and this is the best accuracy I've ever gotten in these games on any sort of control scheme I've ever tried. This is going to absolutely destroy something like a Wiimote with a dolphin bar, take my word for it. So the first thing you need to do if you're using this or any other GUN4IR software as far as emulation is concerned is you need to make sure that you have all of those IR sensors at the points in which the calibration software shows them to you. If you need a primer on this, I'll leave a link in the description below to my initial setup video. But once you get that done, you will see the crosshair within Model 2 emulator is tracking very accurately, but there's more we need to do to get this set up to make sure it's working the way you want. So if we pop over to the GUN4IR software and we go to Input Output tab right here, we're going to have multiple options as far as how you reload the gun. You can do off-screen reloading, you can do auto reloading, or you can use the side button on the GUN4IR itself to make sure you can reload. You want to make sure you're set up for mouse and keyboard on gun mode as well, but you can shoot in the corner, you can use the reload button, you can do a normal shot, it's all up to you. And trigger is going to be mouse left, A and B are going to be mouse right, and mouse middle. This is going to adhere to what something like Model 2 emulator is going to use by its default button configuration. And again, whatever you want to do for reload's totally fine. If you want to shoot off screen, you can set that option as well, and I'll go over in just a moment how we set up the screen space configuration as far as aspect ratio is concerned when you want to do something like that. Now when you open up Model 2 emulator, be aware that you can't configure any of the controls unless a game is running, because every single game has its own control options that you want to configure. So let's load up something, that way we can kind of see the GUN4IR in action and talk about some of the other stuff we need to do. By default, Model 2 emulator launches in a small window, and from there you can take a look at all of the different controls we have right here, as well as the test and service button. Those are going to be very important, because as we get into the actual game, the crosshair I've left on, you don't need to have that on, but you'll also see the in-game crosshair as well, because this is an XY potentiometer based game, not a light gun game, and you're going to see that the aim is way off. For every single light gun game in Model 2 emulator, you want to hit F2 to go into the test menu, and you're going to set your aim. Every single game is going to have a different way to do this, because some games use the raster light gun sensor and other games use analog controls and emulated the feeling of an actual light gun. So for something like Gunblade New York here, just read the screen. It's going to say aim set, pull one player or two player trigger to start. You can see how far the crosshair is off, and now I'm going to swing the gun to the four corners of the screen where those IR sensors are, and then you're going to go ahead and pull the trigger one more time. You will see that the actual in-game crosshairs, the yellow ones, disappear, but when I do this and pull the trigger after showing all of those cardinal directions, you will see I now have perfect accuracy. So when I go back into the game, the crosshair is almost dead center straight. I probably could have done a better job of this, but I was doing it over the camera because I am shooting at the same time. But if you pay attention to where you're going, you're going to have that dead center accuracy, and anything within that circle is going to be hit, the yellow one. And now that we're actually in Gunblade New York, this is absolutely spectacular. Do be aware that this is a machine gun game, so you hold the trigger down and you will constantly be firing the entire time you're playing it. And you can set the recoil options to make sure that they vibrate every single time you do that, or you can turn them off as well. Honestly, in these games I actually turn them off because my hand ends up falling asleep after a while. But if we move over to direct capture here, and I've turned the crosshair off as well, this is just the best way I've played this game unless I've been in front of an arcade cabinet holding onto the big gigantic plastic gun. This is super impressive, and if you pay attention to the calibration settings, what I've shown you so far, you will be playing it. But let's take a look at a completely different game that uses completely different technology if you were in the arcades. Obviously, if you can't tell already, we're playing the House of the Dead. Now watch where the crosshair is and watch where the bullet strike lands. In games that don't have a crosshair like they would in arcades, you can just basically trace your accuracy with where that little flash goes to where the shot is. The crosshair is here, and if I pull the trigger, we are down and to the right of where the actual aim should be. Every single light gun game you play in the Model 2 emulator needs to be calibrated aim-wise before you take your first playthrough. So hit F2 again. F1 is going to cycle through the options, go down to gun settings, and go down to gun adjustments. Now you'll see I have the in-game crosshair that is missing, but we have the Model 2 crosshair over top. go ahead and follow those targets, make sure that you get them right in the center and pull the trigger. You can see me adjusting the gun on camera in real time. Once you've done these two little things, you're going to see now calibrating, and now we have that bullet directly in the middle of the crosshair that the Model 2 emulator puts on top of it. All this is doing is emulating a mouse, so we have all of the different buttons assigned to the GUN4IR, and now the accuracy is 100% perfect. This is as good as if you went into an arcade and found a brand new machine with brand new light guns, because trust me, most of these machines have way worse calibration because they're old than you're going to get on something like GUN4IR. Now, as far as the reload options are concerned, again, I use the button on the side because I hold the GUN4IR with two hands, and that might not be the normal situation. So if you want to do off-screen reload, you can enable it, use the reload button, or any other combinations of that, including shooting off the actual screen like you would in an arcade cabinet. This is totally subjective. You get to pick whatever you want. You can also set the pedal button to reload as well. And depending on what GUN4IR model you have, you're going to have more or less buttons on the actual unit. I have a trigger and two side buttons. That's all I have, but that's all I need to be able to accommodate my particular play style. The left button under my thumb is going to be my reload. The trigger is going to be the trigger. And if I'm playing something like Time Crisis, the pedal would be on the right as well, or I actually have a pedal I can put on the floor. Now, if you want to do shoot off screen, I recommend you do content aspect ratio and not the full widescreen. This is going to aid you more and allow you to still point at the TV but not where the game is playing, to be able to reload in the actual game itself. But every single game I threw at GUN4IR and Model 2, and I played every single light gun game to test it out, was sheer perfection. Something like Virtual Cop or Virtual Cop 2, House of the Dead, Gunblade New York, these were all playing so incredibly well. I have not had this good of an experience playing these games outside of something like playing the Sega Saturn version with my light gun on my PVM, and obviously those are inferior ports to Model 2. And Model 2 emulation is quite good, and if you follow this guide, you're going to be playing all of these games as well, and that's absolutely awesome. So I'll talk about a few of the games I can definitely recommend. Something like Behind Enemy Lines here is a fun, if not slightly janky light gun game that actually uses, just like Gunblade New York, an XY coordinate setup. It's basically a gigantic analog controller, and you'll see here as I move the GUN4IR all around, you get the crosshairs on the screen in real time. These were built into the game. Or something like Rail Chase 2, again, it's going to have a crosshair on screen from the actual game, just like if you were playing in arcades, because again, it's an XY coordinate. But the GUN4IR software and the mouse setup along with Model 2 emulator make this an absolute breeze to just jump in and play. But I just can't stress enough, you have to calibrate the aim in every single game the first time you play it to make sure everything is good full screen. After that, unless something goes haywire, you should never have to go back into the test menu and touch it again. But Rail Chase 2 here with the GUN4IR set up and calibrated to my TV, absolutely outstanding. Or something like Gunblade New York, again, this is just the best way I've played this game in years, because I have not seen a Gunblade New York cabinet in probably like 5 or 6 years, and honestly the calibration on the analog was not very good, so this is definitely just better. But whatever I throw at the GUN4IR and the Sega Model 2 emulator, it has been 10 out of 10 sheer perfection, and it is very easy to set up. Pick your reload settings, make sure you calibrate your screen, decide whether you want that content aspect ratio or full screen depending on how you reload. Make sure you calibrate each and every game in the test menu for your aiming, and then you're literally just playing the game as good as if you were in arcades. If you have any questions or need any help, leave me a comment down below, and I will have a Model 2 emulator specific tutorial coming soon. But go shoot some zombies. Bye bye.